I remember the snow more than anything. Not the cold, not the mammoth's scream, not even the sound of my father's voice calling my name as I ran through the ice-crusted clearing. Just the snow. It fell like slow ash from a sky too quiet for the chaos below it. The flakes caught in my eyelashes as I blinked against the shock of what I had just seen. The mammoth didn't fall right away. That's a lie we tell around the fire to make the story neater. In truth, it staggered, bled, howled. Its massive body lurched forward in slow motion, dragging spears from its flanks like wooden teeth. One tusk shattered against a boulder with a crack I felt in my rib cage, and then, only then, did it fall, like a house built from thunder and grief, slamming into the snow with a quake that made birds lift in panic from a mile away. I was 13. My hands were too small for the spear. I carried, my legs too weak to run fast without slipping. But I had begged to come, cried even. The elders had laughed at me until my father said, "Let the boy see what feeds him." And now I was here kneeling beside a creature older than our stories, breathing the iron-scented air of victory and wondering why it felt like defeat. You probably imagine mammoth hunting was all muscles and mayhem, but that's just what the cave paintings show. They don't capture the shaking knees, the misthrown spears, or the way your stomach flips when the mammoth looks straight at you, eyes dark as oil, like it sees your whole soul and finds it unimpressive. It was winter, though technically we didn't have seasons the way you think of them. Just the time when everything hurts more. My fingers were red and cracked beneath the rawhide wraps. My nose ran constantly. We'd left the hearth behind at dawn, and now dusk crawled up the hills, throwing long blue shadows across the snowfield where the mammoth lay dying. Here's your historical fact. For the evening, some mammoths could weigh up to 12 tons and live as long as 60 years. That's a lot of experience to outrun a group of half-frozen, underfed humans with sharp sticks. We didn't win because we were stronger. We won because we lied better with traps, with patience, with decoys that cost lives. I watched as the final spear was thrust behind its shoulder blade, right into the heart, if the gods were with us. The beast let out a sound I still hear when I'm between dreams. It wasn't a roar. It was a groan low and long, like the earth itself had been pierced. Then it stopped. Everything stopped. And one of the elders, Tarak, I think, just whispered, "It is done." I didn't cry. I wanted to. Instead, I found myself stepping forward. My feet sunk into the snow, crunching through a patch stained red and steaming. The mammoth's eye was open glassy, still catching the light of the setting sun. I stood there for a long time. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted it to blink. Maybe I wanted it to forgive us. "You'll want to eat," someone said behind me. I turned to see my cousin Veth holding a strip of dried berries and fat. His nose was broken from a fall last week, still crooked, still bleeding occasionally. "You'll puke later anyway. Might as well do it full." He wasn't wrong. First kills mess with your head. Every boy my age knew that. First blood, first beast, it makes you a man, they say. But no one tells you what kind. The meat was good, sweet from the cold. We cooked strips over hastily built fires, flipping them on hot stones, while the elders chanted old names into the wind. Not spells exactly, just words to keep the dead calm. Here's an odd little fact to throw in your brain soup. Some ancient tribes buried mammoth skulls under their huts to anchor them to the earth, as if the spirit of the beast might hold your house still when storms came. I always liked that image, sleeping above a giant's bones, pretending you're safe. Around the fire, stories started pouring like melted snow. Tarak told of a mammoth hunt where the beast drowned 3 men in a frozen river. Someone else claimed their grandfather once rode a mammoth just for a moment, he swore. Someone farted. The mood broke. We laughed. But in the back of my mind, I kept hearing that groan. I kept seeing its eye. Later that night, after the fires dimmed and most of the men snored through their furs, I slipped away. I wanted to see it again. Alone, without the noise. Snow crunched beneath my boots. The stars above blinked like curious ghosts. The mammoth's body steamed gently in the moonlight like it wasn't quite ready to stop being alive. I sat next to it, legs crossed, arms wrapped around my knees. I didn't speak. Didn't need to. Historians still debate whether early mammoth hunts were organized through spoken language or just grunts and gestures. But sitting there, I could swear the mammoth had spoken something back. Not in words, but in silence, in sheer size, in stillness. The first hunt marks you, like a tattoo in your chest. And I think deep down, I knew even then, this wasn't going to be the story I told around the fire. This was the one I'd whispered to myself years later when the world had changed again. And I wasn't sure I remembered who I'd been before that eye looked through me. The fire was always the beginning and the end. No matter how far we traveled, how deep we wandered into the white silence of the world, the fire brought us back to ourselves. That night, it was burning low, flickering orange and blue over the singed rocks, casting long shadows that danced like spirits across the furs draped around our shoulders. I sat close enough to feel the heat on my numb fingers, not close enough to be seen. The older men formed the circle Tarak, with his face like dried bark, my father Veth's uncle, whose name I still forgot, and a few others who walked like they remembered being faster once. They sat cross-legged faces bent toward the flames like sunflowers toward a sun that had long stopped rising. And they whispered, not in fear, but in reverence. About the hunt, yes, but mostly about what we couldn't see, what we weren't allowed to speak aloud while the sun watched. The mammoths carry memory, Tarak said, voice low, teeth missing. Not just their own. The lands, the skies. When one falls, something is forgotten forever. I wasn't supposed to hear that, but nobody stopped me. My father added, that's why we don't kill unless we must. Not because they're gods, because they remember the gods. Okay, maybe I'm being dramatic, but you sit around a fire while a dead creature the size of your dreams steams in the dark, and see if you don't start believing the air has secrets. Here's a little-known historical fact to chew on in some archaeological digs. Mammoth bones were arranged deliberately, sometimes in spirals or strange geometric patterns, not always for homes or tools. Sometimes it seems just for the sake of design or ritual. Nobody's quite sure. But those spirals showed up across regions that never spoke to each other. So either we all just liked spirals or something deeper was going on. Back to the fire. Back to the circle. Someone passed around fermented roots in a gut bladder pouch. One sip, and your eyes warmed up like they'd been hugged. Veth took 2 gulps and started talking nonsense about how the mammoth looked like his mother-in-law with tusks, which got a good round of snorts. A couple of the older guys made bets about who would puke in the snow first. Spoiler, it was Veth. But beneath the laughter, the rhythm of the stories never stopped. And the rhythm is what mattered. The stories weren't just to scare kids or fill silence. They were blueprints, maps for the part of the world we hadn't reached yet. Every tale of a spirit in the northern lights, or a mammoth that vanished into mist, or the hunter who came back from the dead with moss in his teeth, was a guidepost. Listen to the old lies, Tarak once told me. so you don't walk into new truths unprepared. That line's been rolling around in my skull ever since. I leaned back against a rock, trying to soak in the heat, trying to ignore how my boots were soaked through. My thoughts drifted to the mammoth sigh again, to the sound it made as it fell, and to something else, the silence that followed. A silence I hadn't expected. "Do you know the first hunt that failed?" my father asked suddenly. The fire popped like it knew the punchline. 8 men, 1 mammoth. They forgot the wind. It carried their scent a day ahead of them. The herd scattered. One man ran too fast, tripped in a gully, and snapped his leg like dry twig. The others left him behind. The gods were not kind. "We found only his teeth," Veth muttered. "That's encouraging." But I saw the way the circle nodded. It wasn't a threat. It was a reminder. The mammoth teaches, not gently. It was my turn to speak. That's how it worked. Even the youngest had to give something an observation, a dream, a vision seen while squatting in the snow for too long. I cleared my throat. "I saw a bone," I said. "Earlier today, carved, in the valley near the creek. It wasn't ours." They all turned to me. What kind of carving, my father asked, not like he doubted me, more like he was trying to remember something ancient. I mimed it with my fingers. Circles, then a spiral, a dot in the middle. It didn't look like hunting marks, Tarak grunted. A warning, or a memory, from who Veth asked. Not who Tarak said. When? And there it was. That uncomfortable itch that slid under your skin when you realized the world had layers you didn't ask for. The past wasn't dead. It was just buried shallow, waiting for you to dig wrong. Here's your oddball fact. Of the night, some early humans believed dreams came from animal spirits whispering through your ears while you slept. That's why they wore skulls to bed, so the whispers wouldn't get lost in the wind. Sounds crazy, right? But then again, you haven't heard the way the snow hums when you're alone out there. Eventually, we drifted off. One by one, heads slumped. Furs pulled tighter. Breath misted into the sky like a prayer. I couldn't sleep. The fire had made my mind too hot. Thoughts bounced like coals. I kept thinking about the spiral, the bone, the mammoth's eye, and something else, the way Tarak had looked at me. Not like a boy, like a question. Historians still debate whether mammoth hunts were purely survival-driven or steeped in ritual and status. But if you sat where I was that night watching the fire die, you wouldn't need a debate. You'd know it wasn't just about meat. It was about memory, power, maybe even fear, because something in the way those old men spoke, something in their hesitation, their reverence, it told me this wasn't just a hunt. It was an invitation, and maybe, just maybe, a warning. We set out before the sun remembered it was supposed to rise. The world was still gray, half dream, half danger. My breath came in clouds that stuck to my fur collar and turned the tips of my hair into frost spikes. Behind us, the fire still crackled faintly. Ahead of us, white silence broken only by the dark trail of blood where the mammoth had fallen. But that wasn't the trail we followed. The herd had moved on, and we had to move with it. Tracking mammoths wasn't like tracking deer or elk. Mammoths weren't subtle. When they walked, the ground noticed. Trees bowed, snow shifted. You could follow a herd like reading a story told by the land itself. Bent branches, torn bark, trampled bushes, steaming dung the size of your head. Yep, glamorous stuff. Tarak led as usual. He walked with the slow certainty of someone who had once been wrong in every possible way and survived to tell others how not to be. My father followed close behind, pointing out the marks I'd missed: fur, snagged on stone, a broken sapling bent in the direction of flight, a patch of grass uncovered where something massive had rested. I kept pace with Veth, who occasionally muttered, if they walked any slower, the mammoths would loop back and trample us again. He was joking. Mostly. That's when I saw it. A skull, half buried in snow, tucked beside a crooked pine tree like a forgotten offering. Not mammoth. Human. I stopped walking. Veth, I said. He turned. His eyes followed my finger. We both knelt, brushing the snow away. The skull had a hole in the center. Not from time or rot. This was clean intentional. And next to it, a stone marker. Just a slab leaning forward, slightly etched, with that same spiral I'd seen days before. I felt cold in a new way. Don't touch it, said my father suddenly behind me. I wasn't going to. I lied. Good, he said, because it's watching you. That did not help. Here's your historical flavor of the day. Some early burials were marked not with mounds or stones, but with arranged bones in patterns, spirals, rings, even stars. Scholars believe these were either spiritual symbols or early attempts at mapping the sky. So either it was a gravestone or the world's weirdest calendar. We left it undisturbed. The air felt heavier afterward. We kept moving. By midday, we found more than tracks. We found bones. Mammoth ribs scattered like enormous pickup sticks across the snow. Some charred. Some cracked open at the ends like they'd been split for marrow, but not by us. These aren't fresh, Tarak muttered, crouching beside one. But not old either. How long, I asked. He sniffed. 3 days, maybe 4. My father added, there's another group out here, which was bad. See, in our little corner of history, other humans weren't just neighbors. They were threats. Resources were slim. Hunts took planning. If someone else had come this far, they were either desperate or dangerous, or both. We started moving quieter, eyes sharper. The trail curved down into a frozen valley. The walls were steep on both sides. Bad news for escape routes. But that's where the signs led. Crushed shrubs, droppings, even a patch where the snow had melted from body heat. And then the carvings, dozens of them, etched into the cliff face high up where no one could have reached easily. Mammoths, yes, but also stick figures with wide eyes, spirals, stars, a shape that looked almost like a hand, but with too many fingers. Is that new? I whispered. No, Tarak said, but it's not ours. Veth tilted his head. Why would anyone draw mammoths above a death trap? My father sighed. To tell the next fool exactly where to look. Historians still debate whether early art served as spiritual communication territorial markers or something closer to graffiti. But when you're standing in a frozen canyon, staring up at 100 haunting eyes carved in stone, the message is clear. We were here. And maybe, don't follow. We did anyway. Because of course we did. The wind picked up curling into the valley like a warning. We pressed on. The tracks narrowed multiple mammoths, yes, but no longer calm. Their prints dug deeper, erratic, like they'd been startled, panicked. Something had chased them, or scared them badly enough to flee uphill. The first signs of the slope were steep drifts of snow crusted over with ice. We had to dig footholds just to keep from sliding backward. My legs ached. My stomach grumbled. Veth complained the whole way up about the wind, about his boots, about the fact that no mammoth was worth this many blisters. And then he stopped, dead still. Do mammoths climb? He asked. No, I said. Then what the hell is that? We all turned. And there it was. At the top of the slope, half hidden by rocks and snow, stood a figure. Not moving. Not blinking. Just watching. Human, maybe. Wrapped in thick fur, face covered, standing impossibly still. Then it turned, walked back behind the rocks. Gone. We all stood there a moment too long. Let's go around, my father said. Nobody argued. Here's your weird fact to take home. There are cave sites in Europe that have layers of human occupation going back 40,000 years, and in several of them, unexplained human-like footprints appear hundreds of feet inside pitch-black cave systems with no torch remains nearby, as if someone was just watching, quietly, in the dark. We made camp that night on the flat ledge of a frozen lake. No fire. Too risky. We ate cold meat and chewed roots until our jaws hurt. Nobody told stories. Nobody even looked at each other. I didn't sleep. I stared out at the ridgeline, waiting for that figure to return. But nothing came. Only wind. Only silence. And the slow, distant crack of ice shifting under our feet. We weren't supposed to be that close. To the mammoths, I mean. The old rules said you waited. Days, sometimes weeks. You circled them, tracked them, watched them bathe in dust, and rub their tusks against stone. And only when the elders said so, only when the land gave permission, did you act. But this wasn't a normal hunt anymore. We had crossed too many signs, seen too many bones. And now, the herd was right there nestled at the edge of a wind-carved basin. 5 of them. One was young. One was massive, bigger than the one we'd brought down. The matriarch, surely. Her tusks were longer than my father's spear. Tarak whispered, "We take the small one." Veth grunted. Easier said than done. We crouched behind a ridge of snow, our silhouettes hidden by jagged rocks and silence. The cold was biting, but I barely felt it. My pulse was louder than the wind. I could hear the mammoths breathing big, foggy exhales that sounded like the earth itself was trying to stay warm. Tarek began assigning roles. "I'll go left. You 3 loop right. Drive it forward. Force it to separate." I nodded. Veth cursed under his breath. My father placed a firm hand on my shoulder. "No fear," he said. "Yeah, easy for you to say, Dad." We moved like ghosts. Silent hunched, every footfall placed with care. I could feel the slope beneath me shift with each step, icy gravel giving way to softer snow. We crept closer, closer, until I could smell them. Have you ever smelled a mammoth? It's like wet leather and moss rolled in dirt, multiplied by 10 tons of old sweat. Oddly comforting. Like something ancient that refused to be washed away. We raised our spears, and then a shout. From behind us, not ours, the mammoths reared in panic, trumpeting, stomping. The ground trembled as they turned to flee, and I was knocked flat by the sheer gust of one's breath as it bolted past. Chaos erupted. Veth screamed, "Who the hell was that?" I rolled over, just in time, to see a figure darting down the opposite ridge, fur-cloaked fast and carrying not a spear, a torch. They lit fire on the windward side, my father spat. Idiots. The smoke blew straight into the herd. The mammoths panicked, scattered, not hunted driven. Why would they? I started. To take the kill from us, Tarak growled. Sabotage. From whoever had carved those spirals. Whoever had stood on that ridge. This wasn't a shared hunt. It was a theft. We gave chase, but not in a straight line. Tarak adjusted instantly. They want the calf, so do we. Cut through the trees. Intercept it. The 4 of us veered into the forest, dodging branches, our breath ragged with exertion and rage. I didn't think. I ran. And then I saw it. The calf had broken away just like Tarak predicted. Smaller, slower, stumbling on the frozen roots. It turned its massive head toward us, blinking. I froze. Its eyes. They were brown, not black, not glassy, like the one I'd seen die. These were soft, frightened, almost human. I lowered my spear. That's when Veth surged past me, yelling, "Move!" He hurled his spear and missed, not by much, enough to scare the calf deeper into the woods. Tarak caught up, eyes blazing. "What are you doing?" "We don't have time to be gentle." "Then maybe you don't belong in this hunt," Tarak snapped. I wasn't the only one who felt the shift. Here's your historical snack for this bit. Evidence shows some early human groups never targeted mammoth calves, even during famine. Possibly because the herd would defend them so fiercely. Or maybe, just maybe, because we saw too much of ourselves in their clumsy, innocent movements. We tracked the calf another hour, and that's when the betrayal hit. Not from the mammoths, from Veth. He disappeared for 10 minutes, claimed he was scouting. Then we heard it, another horn call. This time, human. Sharp, high, deliberate. Tarak's eyes narrowed. He's signaling. To who, I asked. To them. And suddenly, it all made sense. The spirals, the sabotage, the torch. Veth wasn't just scared of missing the kill. He was working with the rival hunters. My stomach twisted. Tarak turned on his heel. We're done. Back to camp. But the calf I started, gone now. Gone because of us. We marched in silence. My father's jaw was clenched so hard I thought his teeth might snap. I didn't speak. Neither did Tarak. Only Veth, trailing behind, muttered, "It wasn't supposed to go this way." No kidding. Here's a strange little fact. In some cave paintings, the hunters are depicted smaller than the animals they pursue, sometimes much smaller. Almost like children drawing giants, or like guilt made manifest. Back at camp, we built no fire. Tarak spoke only once, as he sat down and began sharpening his blade. Loyalty is older than hunting, he said. That night, no one slept beside Veth. Even in the cold, he lay alone. The storm didn't announce itself. It just arrived like a lie whispered between trees, then suddenly believed by the sky. At first, it was a hiss, a little wind through the pines, then a groan. Then the world simply disappeared into white. Snow came down in sheets, sideways and spiteful. We'd barely broken camp when the first flurries turned into a blizzard. Within minutes, I couldn't see 10 steps ahead. The horizon vanished. My hands went numb, even inside their wraps, and my breath felt like chewing glass. We need shelter, Tarak barked, though his voice was already being shredded by the wind. We split up instinctively. My father and Tarak veered left toward the rocks. Veth and I tried to keep to the tree line. That was mistake number one. Splitting in a storm is like dropping your compass into a river and deciding to trust your vibes. Snow howled like it was alive. It clawed at our faces, filled our mouths when we gasped. The ground tilted in every direction. I couldn't tell if I was walking uphill, downhill, or in circles. Even Veth's shape disappeared behind me like smoke. I yelled. Nothing. Then the wind knocked me over. I fell. Sideways, rolled down a small slope, and hit something hard. Ice, not snow ice. I blinked, wiped my eyes, and realized I had stumbled into a small frozen hollow, half covered by bent trees and drifts. It shielded me from the worst of the wind at least. I pulled my furs tight and tried to make sense of my own breath. Which way had I come from? Which way was up? And that's when I saw it, a shape beneath the ice, big. I crawled forward, brushing away snow, letting my body heat melt a window through the frost. It took minutes. Then I saw the face, not human, not mammoth, something else. Its tusks were curled inward like the shell of a nautilus. Its eyes were sealed shut, but wide. The skull had ridges I didn't recognize, horns or crests, or maybe some long-dead deformity. And around its body were bones, arranged deliberately, in a spiral. My blood felt suddenly colder than the ice. I don't know how long I stared. Here's your historical slice. Some Ice Age creatures have never been fully classified fossils that don't match known species. Teeth that don't fit existing jaws. We assume they're misidentified, but part of me wonders if we're just afraid to admit something older was watching us before we knew how to watch back. I heard a crack, then another. The ice groaned like an old man trying to stand. I scrambled back, heart pounding, certain that the thing was going to open its eyes. It didn't, but I ran anyway, out of the hollow, up the slope into the storm. I didn't know where I was going. I just ran, and somehow I stumbled into Veth. He was sitting under a ledge, shivering, eyes wide. "What happened to you?" he asked, voice hoarse. "Don't know," I lied. "Just needed to move." We huddled together for warmth. Didn't speak, didn't sleep. When the storm passed, hours later, though it felt like days, we found my father and Tarak near a split rock formation. Alive barely. They'd taken shelter in a narrow crevice, melted snow for water, and waited out the howling. "Everyone alive?" Tarak asked. "Define alive," Veth muttered. No one laughed. We waited until light returned. The landscape had changed. Snow dunes where there were none, tracks erased, trails gone. But the spiral carvings, those were still there, more of them, etched into the bark of a tree we hadn't passed before. "Someone followed us," my father said. Tarak stared at the spiral. "No, they were already here." "That's comforting, right? Just your average blizzard bone creature and ancient unknown watchers. Here's your oddball historical detour. Some early humans left behind handprints in caves with missing fingers. At first, scholars assumed frostbite. Others now believe it may have been ritual mutilation, a way to mark themselves as chosen or cursed. We didn't talk about what I'd seen under the ice. I didn't want to. Not yet. Instead, we limped forward. The mammoths had scattered, sure, but they weren't gone. The snow revealed the new tracks, fresh heading toward a high ridge. We followed, not just for meat anymore, not just for pride. Now, it felt like we were chasing something else entirely, something we'd already disturbed. We made camp again that night, closer than usual, fire blazing high. Tarak sat in silence, sharpening his blade. My father stared into the fire, like it owed him answers. And Veth finally looked me in the eye. "I didn't betray you," he said. "Not really," I didn't reply. Just tossed another bone into the flames. The snow kept falling, but quieter now, as if waiting. The world was breathless. That's the only way I can describe the morning we caught up to them. No birds, no wind, no whisper of trees. Just a wide frozen plain, stretching beneath a pale blue sky, and 5 dark shapes in the distance, still moving, still mammoth. We'd tracked them for days, through blizzards and bone-marked forests, across rivers that didn't freeze, and ridges carved by time. We were lighter now, hungrier. The silence had changed us. Even Veth had stopped talking. That alone was historic. We approached from the south, using the shadow of the cliffs to mask our scent. Tarak said little. My father checked the traps he'd buried along the narrow pass. No luck. The mammoths were too clever for pits. We needed a slope, a choke point, a moment of chaos we could control. And we found it. A narrow ledge curved around the edge of a shallow gorge. The mammoths were heading straight toward it. If we struck fast, we could push the smallest toward the edge. That was the plan anyway. Funny how plans sound so good until you try them. We set the ambush, each of us in position. Tarak above the ledge with rocks to drive them down, my father and I hidden in the gully, Veth circling behind to close them in. The wind was still. The mammoths were near. Then one of them stopped. The matriarch. She turned slowly and stared directly at the ledge where Tarak crouched. Her ears flared. Her trunk lifted. She knew. There's your historical fact of the day. Modern elephants can smell water from over 10 miles away, recognize individual humans even years after contact, and mourn their dead. Mammoths likely shared these traits, and that meant they weren't just big, they were aware. Tarak dropped the first stone. A boulder tumbled down the ridge, crashing through ice and sending up a plume of powder. The herd panicked. The young ones stumbled. And that's when everything went wrong. The matriarch didn't run. She charged, straight up the ridge, toward Tarak. We'd never seen anything like it. Her legs tore through snow like it wasn't there. Her tusks caught the light, enormous, jagged, terrifying. Tarak tried to leap back, but she reached him before he could even scream. "Ease. I'll spare you the details." This isn't that kind of story. Let's just say she made sure we remembered her. Chaos followed. Veth came from behind, yelling like a madman. My father and I leapt from cover, spears raised. But it was all noise now. Roaring, trumpeting men shouting, snow spraying in every direction. The young mammoth bolted right toward the edge. My father ran after it, slipping, shouting for me to flank it left. I did. Somehow. I don't remember how my legs worked. Just that they did. We drove it closer, closer. Then the snow beneath it cracked, and the ground gave way. It didn't fall cleanly. It fought. It twisted, trumpeted, tried to turn mid-plunge. Its legs scrabbled at the crumbling edge as it tipped sideways, and for a split second I thought maybe it would climb back up. But it didn't. It fell. And the sound it made, oh, that sound. Not a scream, not a roar. Just this low, deep, disappointed groan, like the earth had let it down. The rest of the herd scattered. The matriarch retreated, blood streaking one side of her face, but she didn't fall. Not yet. Veth ran up beside me, panting. "We did it," he gasped. My father approached silent. Then he knelt beside the broken ledge and whispered something I couldn't hear. He stood, looked me in the eye. "We bring it back. All of it." I nodded. And we did. We climbed down carefully to where the mammoth had fallen. Its legs were twisted. Blood pooled in the snow, warm and steaming. Its eyes stared at nothing. The same way the first one had. I dropped to my knees beside it, not from grief, from exhaustion, from the weight of what we'd done. Here's a weird little fact. In certain burial sites, mammoth bones were used not just for structures, but for ceremonial masks, some so large they had to be worn by more than one person. Whether it was ritual or play, no one knows. But I wondered then what kind of ceremony we were part of now. Veth broke the silence. "You saw the spiral again, didn't you?" I blinked. "What? Back in the storm?" "You saw something, I can tell." I didn't answer. He nodded anyway. "It's following us." We stayed there a long time in that quiet bowl of snow and blood. Eventually, we cut the meat, packed it, tied the tusks with rope and sweat. Tarek's body we couldn't carry. We covered it with stones, said the old words, left his blade on top. My father stood the longest over the pile, then finally turned away. We moved on, slowly, quietly, changed. Historians still debate whether the mammoth's extinction was caused more by climate change or by human hunting. But I think about that day, the storm, the fall, the groan, and I wonder if maybe they let themselves go. Or maybe they were just tired of running. The return is always quieter than the hunt. We didn't speak much on the way back. Not because there was nothing to say, but because there was too much, and the words would have shattered it. We carried the meat between us, heavy with fat and blood packed in furs and frozen solid. The tusks dragged behind on sleds we built from branches and sinew. Every time they scraped the ice, it sounded like a distant scream. I kept looking behind me, expecting something, not a beast, a shadow, or maybe just a question. Our village looked smaller when we came over the final ridge. The smoke from the hearth rose gently, as if nothing had changed. Children ran out to meet us. The old ones waited near the fire circle, eyes narrowed against the sun. They saw our packs. They counted our faces. And they knew. That night, we laid the meat on stones to thaw, and my father took the tusks into the central hut. Only the oldest were allowed to carve them, etching our names, the symbols of the hunt and the spiral we'd all seen too many times. I sat by the fire, knees pulled to my chest, Veth beside me. He hadn't said much since the fall. I think part of him had fallen with the calf, or maybe with Tarak, or maybe before back when he'd first thought of betrayal, and then done it anyway. He broke the silence. "They're not watching us anymore." I looked at him. "What do you mean?" "The mammoths, the ones that died, the ones before that. They used to watch us, judge us. Now I think they're just done." I didn't know what to say to that. Here's your historical dose. The last known mammoths lived on Wrangel Island north of Siberia, nearly 4,000 years after their mainland cousins vanished. They were smaller, weaker, and possibly sterile, surviving ghosts of a once proud species. No one knows why they lasted or why they stopped. We feasted, not happily, but thoroughly. The meat was rich, marbled with fat. The bones boiled for marrow. The hide stretched and salted. No part wasted. But I kept thinking about the spiral. It showed up again, on the inside of the hide, burned in, faint but real. I showed my father. He didn't say anything, just rolled it tighter and tucked it away. The next morning, they asked me to speak. The hunt had been mine, they said. My first, my rite of passage. But I didn't want it. I didn't want to be the boy who brought back the meat. I wanted to be the boy who remembered. So I stood up in front of the circle, and I said this: we chased a giant, and it fell. But the ground where it fell is not the same anymore. Something changed. Something old is gone. Something else woke up. And I don't know if it was worth it. The fire crackled. No one clapped. But no one stopped me. And that's how I knew I was heard. Here's your last strange fact. Some tribes believed that the mammoth was not an animal at all, but a spirit in the form of flesh. That to kill one was to wake the world, and that the world would not sleep again. That night, I slept outside, under the stars, away from the stories, the laughter, the knives carving meat. And I dreamed, not of the hunt, not of the mammoth, but of the spiral, spinning, turning, opening, and inside it an eye, just one, huge, brown, watching, not angry, not kind, just tired. And then it closed, slowly, like the last door of an ancient house shutting behind us forever. And so that was the first hunt, not the first ever, but my first. The one that made me older in ways I didn't ask for. The one that took a part of me and left something else in its place. Something heavier. Something quieter. We brought back food, yes. We survived the storm, yes. We saw things. I still can't name Bone Spiral's figures in the snow. Something buried in ice that felt older than the gods. I watched a giant fall, not once but twice. And both times, the world seemed to sigh, as if it knew the weight of what we'd done. Hunting isn't just spears and meat. It's memory. It's the invisible cost carved into every bone you take home. You don't walk away from a mammoth hunt unchanged. You carry it in your shoulders, in your sleep, in the quiet between stories. Sometimes, I think we weren't chasing the mammoth. I think we were chasing something else, some old truth we didn't know how to ask for. Some version of ourselves that knew what to do with silence and snow and a spiral carved in bone. And maybe we caught it, or maybe it caught us. But either way, something ended, and something else began. So if you're ever walking alone, and the snow is deep, and the trees are quiet, and the wind starts whispering your name, don't follow it. Not right away. Sit down. Wait. Listen. Because the first hunt isn't about what you kill. It's about what follows you home, and whether or not it stays quiet.